we're live over here. Sorry, Rose behind you.
Live in the
Behind
Right
you.
in the middle.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're having difficulty with this one.
All right. Okay, hi. This is Rose Datoc Dall, and we're here live streaming our figure drawing and painting workshop at Southern Virginia University in Lancaster. So what we have here today is what we're going to accomplish today in the demo that I'm going to do here from 2 to 5 is I'm going to do both a pastel drawing demo and an oil painting demo, and I'm going to do very quick studies of each because I'm going to talk about the relationship of drawing to painting. And I get a lot of students who are really good draftsmen, but they don't know how to make the connection from drawing to painting. So that's what I'm going to do today. First thing I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be doing a pastel drawing, and some people call them pastel paintings for that reason, because pastel is the perfect bridge between painting and drawing. So, and it's a great, because you jump into color, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to jump into color, but I'm going to show how you can maintain your drawing quality, your linear quality in your oil painting and loosen up. That's kind of our object today. Is what you're looking for in your figure drawing or figure painting is to loosen up. Then that's what we're going to do. This is not an anatomy course. This is strictly a 3-day course on how to loosen up, how to freshen up, and to be more direct, and to get over certain inhibitions when you're approaching doing either a drawing or a painting. So a lot of people, when they start out, get really intimidated with an empty page. And so what I'm telling my students, we have some students here who are beginners, and we have some who are intermediate, and we have some professional artists here. So it's a really, really fun workshop. It's a really fun group, and everybody's different, and everybody's coming at this workshop in a different place. But if you're totally beginning, you don't know where to begin, what I would say first is pretend like you're looking through a camera lens, and if you don't have a viewfinder, you can use your hands, and you probably have seen that. You've seen people really try and do this. It's not cliche. There's a purpose behind that, and that is so that you can define your composition. And so that's kind of what I'm doing right now. I'm kind of probably focusing more on the bust of Michaela, our model, today. And we spent a bunch of time with my students actually preparing the setup, the model setup. Too often, people assume that you just plop somebody in front of you and you magically come up with this amazing drawing. Sometimes that happens, sometimes that does, but more often than not, the person painting, the artist, is usually paying close attention to the angle, to the lighting, to the whole setup. And so we angling the lighting, how she's sitting, and until we got her in what we call the sweet spot, and where you're sitting in a sweet spot. So that's really important. It just doesn't happen. There tends to be a lot more thought on the front end than people give credit. So basically what I'm doing right now, I'm just jumping right in, and I'm mapping out my composition. So I kind of moved her over to the right-hand side because I kind of want to get this part of her shoulder, and I kind of want a little bit more dynamicism than I'm having to be right in the middle of my drawing. So right now, this is what I told my students earlier, but I'll go ahead and tell you, is that when you're sitting down to draw your model, you want to be completely comfortable. You don't want to be moving your head a lot. The only thing that you want to be doing, if your right hand. You probably have everything here within arm's reach of your right hand. And then your head isn't really going to be moving because you don't want to change your point of view. I've had the request that I address how you capture likeness. And this is one of the key things that you need to do is to be relaxed, but don't be moving around and changing your point of view. And then the only thing that's really going to be moving back and forth, you won't be seeing me move my head a lot unless I'm trying to face the camera. You won't be seeing me move around a ton or maybe to come around and reach some of my brushes or my pastels. So right now, my eye is going to be scanning back and forth between my model and my paper. And to be honest, your eye really should be more on your paper or your canvas. And right now, I'm just sort of letting my hand record. Now, the temptation is for students to go in and what do you think artists or novices do first? What feature do students just jump into and draw? Throw it out there. What feature?
The eyes.
The eyes. Okay, I want you to refrain from jumping in and just doing the eyes. I want you to actually map it out. Map out your composition. There's time to go to do your eyes, but actually eyes are one of the last things I do. The eyeballs are one of the last things I put in. I map everything out first, and I'm also staying very, very loose. I'm staying loose because guess what? We're early on. I'm gonna probably make some adjustments later, so my lines are very loose and sketchy. Invariably, I may come and make some adjustments. That's just going to happen. So even if you feel like, oh no, I maybe didn't make her training big enough, I need to add a little bit more. Don't commit to really super hard permanent lines yet until you are a little bit more solid. So really stay loose and fluid, and really let your hand is just capturing what your eyes are seeing. Again, because this is a 3-day course, we're not really going to be doing an anatomy intensive study in terms of we're not going to sit there and label each muscle and each bone. It's just too much to cover in 3 days. But I will tell you that the more you just rely upon what you see, draw what you see, and not what you think you see, let pretty much your hand just record what you see. If you're looking more at your paper and your eye flicking back and forth. And you will have a more accurate likeness if you just trust in that process. It may not look like a full in the beginning, but you'll start to see your lines come together. And see, it's starting to emerge already. Now, a little word about the paper that I'm using here. I'm using hands-on colored paper. Most students just begin on white paper. Everybody begins with pencil paper. And this is one way to sort of break out of just pencil and paper and then jump into color. And if anybody's familiar with my own artwork, I use a lot of color. Oh, fantastic. Okay, we're taking a second here, and I'm going to use this one. Okay.
So just go ahead and copy the introduction.
Okay. All right. influence on the choice of color of paper, but basically what I chose more importantly than color is the value. This is sort of a medium value paper, meaning when I say value, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, value is the lightness or darkness of a color. And I didn't want to do anything too dark because then I would have had to fight with totally blocking out this black paper and just would have had to layer on top of it. And I don't want to have to do that. I don't want to have to fight with my paper. I don't want to have to fight with what's underneath. But hopefully this is sort of this foundation. It bumps up the color right away when you use color. And I love color. I'm kind of a color addict. And it might be complete foreign language to some people, and that's, everybody's sort of beginning at a different place. But what we're doing right here, right now, is before we start talking about color, what I'm doing again is just mapping. I'm considering the placement of everything, and that's what I mean by mapping. And so it's given me a good foundation. These are the bare bones of my drawing, and I've still left it loose enough so if I need to make some adjustments, they can happen. And there will be adjustments. That just is the way it happens. It's just the way it is. And so don't get thrown by that if you find that you're going to have to make some adjustments. Hopefully I'm not having to make major adjustments at this point because I've been just training my eye on her and flicking my eye back and forth and seeing if you're familiar with animation, and animators flip back and forth their drawings as they're animating it to see if it moves and if it's the model lines up with the next drawing. So it's kind of the same concept. Your eye is flipping back and forth to see if the image that you're drawing or painting superimposes on her. And that's why staying in the same spot is really important, and that you're not tilting your head up and down, you're not moving too much. But still, you've got to be really relaxed, because if you're going to be here for a while, you've got to be comfortable, and ultimately, because my goal is hopefully to get you to enhance your fluidity in your drawing. You want to be relaxed, and you're not going to have a fluid drawing if you're uncomfortable, or if your neck is torqued because you're turned a certain way and you're reaching wrong. We want to be ergonomic somewhat. So okay. A word of the, okay, I am using some Prismacolor New Pastels, and Prismacolor is just a brand. You probably are familiar with Prismacolor pencils. For those who are illustrators or those who like to draw, can readily recognize the brand. But they also make pastels, and they're New Pastels, and they're slightly less dusty than your regular chalk pastels, and that's kind of why I like them. And they stay within the same color family as their pencils. So sometimes, even though their color pencils are more waxy, you can maybe cut in and do some detail. And pastels also force you to be loose, because you just cannot get hyper detail. And that, I think, is something that is part of this exercise, is to break you out of being too myopic, too narrowed in on one thing, and being so closed in on detail, and then everything else, when you move outside of that, the face of the eyes and things start to fall apart. We want to avoid that. We want to consider the whole. Consider the whole from the beginning, and you'll just have a better, more loose, more fluid drawing, hopefully. So, okay. Now, what I could do at this point now, to simplify things here, and this also applies for if you're going to be doing a monochromatic drawing, which means you're only using like one color, you're going to use, let's say, white and an umber, or black and white, or whatever. That's a monochromatic. But whether we're talking about monochromatic or we're talking about color, and we're talking about we're going to talk about capturing the values right now. One key to loosening up here is, let's not make this too complicated for ourselves, so just concentrate on 3 values. We want to concentrate on your darkest dark, concentrate on your medium value, meaning, and again, value means the darkness or the lightness. Concentrate on your dark, medium, and then your lights. And then everything else kind of will just fall into place. It just makes things more simple. Another key to just keeping it loose. You don't want to make things complicated. This is sort of the wrong workshop if you want a super hyper realistic, although we're talking about representational. I don't really consider myself a realist, although maybe from an untrained eye it might be considered somewhat realistic, but not photorealistic. So, okay, so we're talking a little bit about value here. But before I jump in, now earlier I had done a drawing where I went in and started putting the values in. This right here, I've started out with I would say it's like a burnt umber color. And when I go to painting, I'm going to actually use a very similar color in painting when I'm doing my drawing underneath the painting. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that drawing because we just want to jump right in. Because I'm going to invariably paint over all the shadows. I'm going to paint over, I'm going to paint over anything that I go in and put in detail at this point. And the same thing applies to pastel, because we're going to approach this like a painting. Now, okay, so I feel like I'm in a pretty good place. I'm sort of going to just put in a little bit of value, but I'm not going to put a ton because, like I said, I'm going to probably end up going over it. But right now, I'm sort of capturing where the shadows, when you're looking at shadows, if you're having trouble identifying which shadows to include, squint your eye at the model and put her out of focus, and the shadows that need to be indicated will jump out at you, and the ones that aren't important will just drop off the wagon and won't be important. You won't need to include them. And I guess you could say we're sort of capturing the impression, although I wouldn't say that this is impressionistic, but it may have some similarities to at least the idea of capturing an impression. Impressionism was in the 19th century, where they were capturing the effect of light and color on canvas. In France, this was a big movement, although it wasn't really popular until much later. It wasn't very vogue. They were kind of rejected at first. But now it's so much a part of the artistic vocabulary that it's hard to fathom that at one point people were like, no, I'm not into that. It's not photorealistic, and people's tastes were not accustomed to it. Okay, so I've started to put a little bit of value in here. Okay. So what I'm going to do, again, because I have a colored background and her skin is not blue, I am going to have to do some layering. And what I'm reaching for here is, we have the light on her is very warm. So I'm going to pick some warm colors. I usually am loath to pick your what's labeled as flesh tone, but it's pretty darn warm, and is kind of on the yellow side. So what I'm going to go do here is I'm going to pick a medium value. I'm going to pick a medium value for her skin tone, and I'm just going to start blocking it in. It's going to be pretty radical, and it's just a second when I jump in, and I'm just going to go for it. And you'll see why. So just trust me, it's going to look pretty crazy in a second. But I love using colored paper because, like I use colored canvas because your color is just going to pop right off of that. So I'm just going to, yeah, that's a little bit too yellow. So I can make some adjustments. And the nice thing about Prismacolors is that you can blend, you can use your finger, or you can just use it straight up. And I'm just going to go ahead. I told you I was going to block out a lot. And that's fine if you don't like doing that approach, but that's just sort of the way I do it. But see, the reason why I put a little bit of the value, I started putting this medium value underneath, is because I knew I wouldn't lose it completely. I totally would not lose it completely. But there's still enough of a ghost of it there that I have, that I can still work with it. And it's still mapped out. Okay. And I will do a very similar approach when I'm painting. I'll go ahead and block out that flesh tone pretty early on. Now, a word about lighting here, and a word about color. Now, when you select your colors, now I want you to be aware that whatever colors you select, they need to be able to fit within the same color universe on your canvas or your paper. And what I mean by that is that when you're looking at blue, it's usually not going to be the blue that comes straight from the tube. It's very rarely, and the reason is because light will hit your subject, your model, and it will alter it. And it will alter that blue to either be a warm blue of her outfit or a cool blue. Likewise with her flesh tone, it's all about light. It is all about light. And so this burnt umber that I've used underneath, it's a really nice universal color, although burnt umber is a bit warmer than raw umber. I used to use raw umber a lot, but I used to feel like I couldn't pull enough contrast out of this. And now you notice that I'm not actually using black, and I'm not going to use black in my pastel palette, and I'm not going to use it in my oil palette because I can mix an approximation of black with my other colors, because black to me doesn't fit in the color universe that is going to happen on my painting. So you'll find none of my paintings, if you ever look on Instagram, you look on Facebook, if you look at any of those drawings or paintings, there's the total absence of black, but you might not know it. There's enough edge work in there, and you would think that they were black because you can mix something that's more rich than your blacks, and blacks will make everything muddy. Umber, this burnt umber is pretty nice and universal in that it won't make your flesh tones too muddy. And it's warm enough so that when you blend it, it's still under normal lighting circumstances, it's a good choice to do your drawing, your underpainting. And you see it's starting to happen already. This is like coming together already. And it's very, very direct. I don't ever spend a lot of time doing an underpainting because, like I said, you just end up painting over it, right? But I do enough of a foundation that I can just launch right in, and that I'm responding to the light and color in front of me, and just trusting my eye. I'm just going to trust my eye to draw what I see, okay? This is a nice medium value, a lightish medium value that I've chosen for her skin tone. I didn't go too light, just make note of that. I didn't go too light yet because I want to be able to make those highlights pop. And what I mean by highlights is when you squint your eye and you look at Michaela, you want to see what are those whitest whites that pop out. Maybe it's like there's a little bit on her forehead and a little bit on her brow and a little bit on her nose and right here on her cheekbone. Those are the things that I'm going to want to pop out later. And it's still light enough that I can go and pull some darker values later as I start to pick out more detail. So happening really, really fast. I'm staying super loose. I love the fun things that you could do with hair. And as things reflect off of hair, you get different colors coming in. And then we'll add those later. Now, a word about red. Remember how I was talking about things need to be in the same color universe? Like black, which is so jarring and contrasty, I don't feel like it comfortably sits. Now, people use black to mix with their colors. There's plenty of artists who use black. I'm just not one of them, and that's fine. Some artists really just love to pull their super, super darks and their lights. I just have never been able to make black work on my paintings. And to each his own, or her own. And you have to sort of find what works for you, but I just have found that I fight with black more than it helps my painting. So, and then red. I was talking about red. Red is the same thing. You really have to be careful about red. Red is just gonna pop off of your canvas and your paper. It's just almost too much. So you might have to tone down your reds. Or you just use a touch of red here and there. Okay, I'm sort of at a point now where I'm going to start picking out a little bit. Now I'm nudging this a little bit more. I should probably check my time, see how we're doing. Oh, we've only been going on this for about 20 minutes, and it's already coming together. So we're in a pretty good place because we're also, stay tuned, don't go away too quick, because we're going to do an oil painting demo of the same pose, and I'm going to show you the relationship and this of a similarity in approach of doing a pastel painting and an oil painting. Now, when I say oil painting, that's the medium of my choice. The same thing would apply to an acrylic painting, but I used to do acrylic painting, and it's fine, but I found that some of the colors really would dry a different color, and it would totally frustrate me. And phthalo, for instance, would just take over. So I kind of switched to oil painting because I found that became less of an issue. And of course, you know, I was doing acrylics back in like the 1990s, and maybe they've come a ways. I don't know, because I haven't been acrylic painting, and there are die-hard acrylic painters out there, and I often do an acrylic underpainting, but I don't do it as my primary end product medium. I do an acrylic, I tint my canvas with acrylic, and it dries fast. My personal preference is not to work wet on wet. There are plenty of artists out there who like to work wet on wet. It doesn't really work for me. I'm a very direct painter, and so when I mix my color and when I lay it down, I don't want it to have to mix with what's underneath and then be like, oh, that threw me. So that's just my personal preference, but there are plenty of artists out there who love to work wet on wet, and it works for them. And so you kind of have to find what works for you. But so see, I'm already here picking out detail a little bit, not getting too married to it, making adjustments. And you can layer pastels like you would layer a painting. That's why you can color on top and make the adjustments that you need, just like you would in a painting. So I'm ever nudging it closer to a more finished look, but it's still really loose. And I pretty much have not gotten into too much color. Now, if you are familiar with John Singer Sargent and you look at his beautiful paintings, his portraiture is just unrivaled. His bravado style paintings are just really, they are the go-to for the contemporary portrait artist. He is the most sought after and chased after painter, portrait painter, I should say, in terms of trying to replicate the magic that he achieves on canvas. His fluidity, his brushstroke is just unrivaled, and his accuracy at just capturing likeness with very, very little effort is just, it's just magical. And if you look at how he approaches flesh tone, you know, he starts out with something that's, again, not going to be your flesh tint that's directly from the tube. I find that the flesh tint is not going to be one-stop shopping for all flesh tones in all situations, and I rarely ever reach for it when I'm doing flesh tone. More than likely, when I get to my canvas, I'll use a lot of either permalba white or titanium white. I actually have titanium white on my palette. We'll get to it in a minute, more than a minute, but not too long. I use titanium white. I use alizarin crimson. Sometimes I use yellow ochre or Naples yellow, and that's kind of your classic approach to flesh tint. Now we've done some things. We've actually added a lighting gel to our lighting here. We've added a rosy colored lighting gel. And so maybe that flesh tint from the tube, which is usually very, very pink and very red, almost too red for most situations, it somehow works here. So, okay. So now, I'm about ready to start adding a little bit more color, and I can add a little bit more red to this. I'm going to hold back on my reds a little bit. I hold my red in reserve, and I'm going to carefully pick the reds that I'm going to be using here. All right. Now, Sargent, because I had mentioned him with regard to flesh tone, is that often what he would do is he would take, like, I suspect that his palette was, like I had mentioned, using a titanium white. He probably used alizarin crimson. He probably used burnt umber.
and he probably used maybe a yellow ochre or a Naples yellow as sort of the basis in whatever quantity he would, depending on if it's a warm flesh tone or a cool flesh tone. But we're only talking about pale skin. We're not talking about like dark skin, which is a whole nother ball of wax, which is wonderful and fun to play with light and how it reflects off of darker complexions. And that's a subject for a whole nother day. But for the pale Caucasian skin, that's kind of a good place to start, is using titanium white and alizarin crimson. Again, this is a little bit more rosy, but what Sargent would often do is he would go in and then he would just take his reds and just pull out a few reds in a few places. My finger was a little dirty there, so I'm gonna have to go and adjust that. I'm actually at the same time I'm at a place now where I can start picking out some highlights. We've been going at this for almost a half hour, maybe not quite. It's not bad, huh, for a half hour. Half hour drawing. But I'm just showing you this approach here because it's going to be so similar to how I approach oil painting. And so you see the relationship of drawing and maintaining that drawing quality. Really, drawing is a foundation for everything. And if you have an opportunity to take a drawing class where you take an observational drawing or human figure drawing class, and I would say do it. Take that opportunity to do it, and get the more you draw and paint the human figure, the better you will get at it. There's really not a whole lot of ways around that. Doing your time, doing it, and it will pay off. You'll get more and more familiar with the structure of the body, the face. And at this point here too, I can make my darks darker and my lights lighter, and just nudge it ever so close, more closely to a more finished product. I can start pulling a few more reds out here. Sargent would just be delicately pulling out a little bit of red in the nose, and warm it up, make this drawing look a little bit more human, but just go easy on your reds. Reds just will take over. I would also suggest getting up and stepping back and looking. If you're this close to your drawing all the time and you think it looks wonderful, and then it looks wonderful until you step back, well, be stepping back. What was that? Right. So I'm probably aware that this microphone, I don't know if it picked up her comment, but basically she just corroborated what I said, because sometimes you think that your drawing is amazing and wonderful until you step back, and she's like, it doesn't look like that. That's so often the case, and it happens to me all the time. Another trick that I was telling my students here, okay, we live in this is the 21st century. So you got to use whatever tools, pretty much any tool is fair game. And what I often do is in addition to using if I can pick it up. Here we go. A mirror. I use a mirror an awful lot. I use a mirror in my, when I'm drawing and painting, because it's like stepping back. But a mirror, as I'm looking at the reflection of my drawing in the mirror, it will reveal any distortions right away, quicker than anything. And you'll go, oh, no, I need to fix that. And we're still very loose, that you can still make adjustments, and I'm not completely married to any one thing. And there have been enough times that I've worked on a drawing or I've worked on a painting and it's just not working. And it's almost better to just sort of wipe it out and start again. Well, you can't really do that with a drawing. It's easy to just get another sheet of paper and start again. But with a painting, I've just taken a rag. It happened a few nights ago where I was painting a face and I thought it was working out, and then it just, I must not have gotten the mapping right. Again, by mapping, I mean just getting the placement of the features. There was just something I was not getting right. And then it's almost better to just wipe it out and do it again, because you think, sometimes you tell yourself, oh, I've worked on this already so much, and I liked this eye, but I didn't like this eye. And sometimes you just have to wipe out a significant portion of it, if not all of it, and just start again. Sargent was known to do this, to the chagrin of some of his clients. Or he'd be working on a piece, and if I'm remembering this correctly, I think I read this in one of the books about him, is that he was working on a commission, and then working on it for weeks and weeks and weeks, and he came back after like 3 weeks and just wiped it out and just did it. He just redid it, and he did it really fast, but it was right. It needed to happen. Sometimes you just can't fix what's broke. So, okay. Again, here I've talked about umber, and I've talked about, let's say you've done a mostly monochromatic drawing where you've just used like white and you used umber, or you used white and you used black, and all of a sudden you change your mind, you want to add color. I say proceed with caution or don't do it. Because sometimes you change your mind as an afterthought and you decide you want to make something color that you didn't begin the process knowing that you were going to do that, can cause you have to tread very carefully, because it's sometimes really hard to do it unless you're super experienced about how to make that work. You're just going to end up with something too muddy or too gray and too dark and dingy. And it's just going to be a source of frustration from beginning to end. So we're trying to avoid that. We're trying to avoid certain pitfalls. So I'm hopefully giving you at least some ways and tips to bypass a lot of technical problems that can come up. Now, I'm not saying this is how you should paint. You shouldn't paint exactly like me. I'm not saying that you should paint exactly like me. That's not really the point of this class. The point of this class is to just get you to, let's remove a few obstacles. Let's remove a few technical issues that are so common to some. You'd be surprised how common these problems are. And then that way, when you hit the ground running, then things start to happen. The magic starts to happen. And I got a question about how do you define your own personal style? How do you get to that point? Well, I can say that it's probably not going to happen in a 3-day workshop, but I can maybe give you a little bit of guidelines as to how to alleviate certain technical problems so that you can improve your draftsmanship, and so that you can then find your own personal style. You can your own personal signature, and that the ultimate goal for an artist is to get in that zone. Is to get in the zone, that creative zone where things just happen, and that you're just kind of, I know it sounds cheesy, but you kind of get one with the medium, you know? But that's really true. That's what happens. Things work for you, and this medium is working for you. That's what we want to have happen. Now I'm starting to pull out a little bit of warm. I've held back on my reds, even though we threw a pink lighting gel on her. What I mean by a pink lighting gel is that we put these colored filters that you put over your lights, kind of like theatrical lighting. And so you can sort of change the mood of your drawing and your painting. Simply by changing the color of your lights. And I do that an awful lot in my paintings. The fun thing now that I'm starting to get into the hair is captured some cool lighting that's kind of reflecting off of the back of her hair back here. And again, you see, I told you, I was true to my word. I haven't drawn her eyeballs yet, have I? A word of caution at this point. Some people like to leave the whites of the eye white and think that that's literal, that the white of the eye is white. It's when you squint and you look at, I'm going to tell my students right now, squint and look at Michaela. Are the whites of her eye really, really white? Is it the whitest thing on your, is that the whitest thing that you're seeing popping? Really, her eyes are kind of in shadow. But she has highlights that are reflected off of her eyeballs. Those might be lighter, but again, they might not be white, but maybe close to it. So I've kind of left it sort of, I've left her eyeballs sort of blank, because again, when I say everything needs to sit in the right universe, this kind of helps it so that the eyes aren't so jarringly white, or the whites of the eye, they're just not going to, she's not going to look like she's possessed or a zombie or something when all is said and done. But it's gonna sit, the color is going to be the right match for everything else that's going on here. So I've held that in reserve, and right now I'm going to start picking out a few more darks. Okay. What I'm grabbing right now is a little bit, okay, I'm doing this with caution. Once you start introducing a darker color, you're going to have to start adjusting everything. So be really, really careful, because it can just take over and you're going to be like, oh, I thought I got the contrast correct. But when you start introducing an even darker, then it can throw the whole feel of your piece. So I am being very cautious, very, very cautious. And therefore you can tone it down by blending it with another color. Right here, believe it or not, this is a kind of an olive green, but it somehow works on her blondish hair. is all about color relationships and colors in relation to each other. So even though you pick up something green and then you put it down on your canvas, it might not look green next to another color. So a painting is all about color relationships. And making sure that everything relates to each other. Again, you can kind of blend, you can kind of pull out some warm areas. And I kind of distributed amongst the class. I had some color wheels. And so I'm only talking about color in with regard to complementary colors, because what I've done here is you can see that I've used, like I said, like this sort of greenish, what really is sort of an olive green. I mean, I'll hold it up. So this is an olive green. This is sort of this olive green color. Oh my goodness, I'm falling apart. My headset is kind of doing something funny. Okay. But it's in my eyes. Now, often what you want to do with a color to sort of tone down its greenness is I'm going to introduce its complement. And so I passed out some color wheels to the students so that if they pick a color and they're finding like, oh my gosh, that blue is just sort of too much, or that green is too much, then one thing you kind of want to do is something that might help is that you want to maybe introduce or maybe blend in its complement. And so this green, I'm going to kind of pick sort of this purpley reddish color into the shadows. And then it totally changes this green to, oh, okay, I get it. She's really blonde. I'm getting it now. It's all about color relationships. All right. I'm going to add a little bit more warmth up top. Oh, probably not the right color here. There we go. If you're just jumping into this workshop, if you just joined us on the internet, this workshop today, what I'm doing a demo of is I'm doing a pastel drawing and an oil painting demo. I'll be doing the oil painting demo in just a little bit. Not too long from now. I'd say in probably about 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes, I'm going to start the oil painting demo, because I'm showing the relationship of drawing and painting, and how to maintain some of your drawing quality in your painting, and how to demystify oil painting if you approach it like a drawing. And so the great bridge between drawing an oil painting or acrylic painting is pastel. I'm using a chalk pastel. I'm using new pastels right now. And we've been going at this this portrait now for about 45 minutes. And so we're in a pretty good place. I feel pretty good. It's feeling loose. It's not feeling like forced. It's feeling pretty good. The object we hope, or at least I hope, of this workshop is that I think students have come to me to try and loosen up, and that's kind of a good that's a good purpose for this demo, is to show really how you can be very direct, and you don't have to do like a meticulous underpainting to really just jump in and really come up with a beautiful product that's accurate and in terms of likeness. It's finished. It feels finished enough. I think a lot of artists do a meticulous underpainting. There are plenty of my colleagues who do that out there, and that's great. There's some really super fabulous artists who do that. I'm just really an impatient type of person, and I just want to get to it. I know plenty of artists who really are meticulous, and they do beautiful work. But you sort of have to find what works for you. And this sort of works with the way that I approach things. I think one of my earliest inspirations was Edgar Degas. It was a revelation to me when I saw an exhibition of his when I was age 17. And I saw at the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C., they had, okay, so this was back in the 80s. They had an exhibition of his drawings and his paintings, and he did multiple versions of the same painting and multiple versions of the same drawing, and it was a revelation to me of the process, and I was so attracted to that. But more importantly, I was attracted to how amazingly accurate he was. He had used such an economy of line. He just was effortless. And I aspired to be that way. That totally affected my approach. So that's often what happens, is that artists today, great artists today, they recognize that they have this heritage of artists that have gone before them. And you can sort of grab inspiration and this and that from the artists that have gone before you. And you pick and choose the things that you just gravitate toward, whether it's their approach, their use of color, their brushstroke, it's, whatever appeals to you. And then you kind of inculcate that, and then you're able to somehow use that. Not necessarily copy it, because that's not what I'm saying at all. Artists take what they've used before, they've inherited, and then they retranslate it into something all their own. And that's kind of the goal of all artists. And I don't know if that can happen in a 3-day workshop, but hopefully once you start understanding that that's part of the process, that's maybe half the battle. Maybe you just need to find those artists that really speak to you. And you can learn so much from them. You can learn so much from going to a museum and studying a certain artist's brushstrokes, or how he painted hands, or how he approached flesh tone. You can just learn so much. And so anyway, I just told you a little bit about sort of the artists that have inspired me. Other artists that have inspired me are Wayne Thiebaud. He is a contemporary artist. He's still alive in California. And fabulous artist with use of color is just amazing and crazy cool. And my mic is doing something funny again. Sorry if I have to readjust. There we go. Of course, I mentioned Sargent, another great influence. We also have N.C. Wyeth, fabulous illustrator. All these guys were just killer at human figure. They were effortless. And their brushstrokes were just fantastic. There's Dean Cornwell. There's just so many artists. Okay. Now, I think I might be ready to approach the eyeballs because I think I want to get going on this oil painting. So I'm going to draw this one to conclusion. And usually when I'm ready to do that, that's when I'm kind of ready to go for the eyes. I'm ready to pull them out. Word of caution, again, I think when it comes to eyes, I think people are going to reach for black to do her eyelashes. Now, Michaela has really lovely eyelashes, but if you squint her eyelashes aren't going to be like the blackest black that's going to be on in your box of pastels. So, and then again, I don't have any black on here, and so it's going to jump out too much. It's just going to be too much. It's going to, again, be this foreign element on my drawing. So I'm going to pull from what I've used already. With caution, I have pulled like an indigo blue. And an indigo blue is, it's going to appear like a cool black. And, but I'm going to be really cautious and really careful. And I'm just going to barely touch. But what's going to be my gun? I'm not going to be formulaic about this because I'm going to say don't do as I do in every case, but do what you see. Draw what you see, and you know, don't reach for the same thing. It's every time we light a model, it might be different, and so the way the light reflects off of her lashes might be different. So anyway. But I will, however, give you some guidelines about being careful with color, being careful about introducing something too late in the game, and because you haven't used it anywhere else, it can throw your whole painting, or it can throw your whole drawing, and so you have to be really cautious about that. And so if you're going to introduce a color, do it early enough on that you're able to sort of make it jive with the rest of your drawing. So I am just being, you know, I'm just barely touching it here and there, just pulling out areas of contrast, and I have a tendency to squint at my model with I usually close my right eye and then I blur her. I do that unconsciously. I do it all the time. So if I look like I'm mad or angry, it's not that I'm mad or angry. It's just because I'm squinting. And I'm really not giving Michaela the stink eye. So that's what I'm doing. I'm blurring her because that blurring her, it puts her out of focus, and it informs me of what color choices I should make, and how dark, what the value is going to be of that color choice, and how exactly to adjust it. And I've decided to use this indigo blue sort of as my darkest dark, but I'm proceeding with caution, because blue, when you introduce blue, it's like black. It can just make everything, it can take over, and you have to just be careful. You just kind of have to do it, and you got to have you can just do enough of it to bring out your darkest darks. Okay. Now a word about eyes and the shape of the eye. The eye is kind of a complex thing in that it's a sphere, and it's a wet sphere, and it's within the socket, which has lids, and the lids move. Like not only does her upper lid move, their lower lid, and so it's mobile and it's facile, and it changes depending on where she's looking, and so capturing the way her eye looks for me, her eye is looking toward my left, and her eyes are, and so what you're trying to do is you're trying to capture that shape of the eye and sort of the choices of where I put my highlights and everything will indicate that it's a sphere. And right now I have again, I haven't done the eyeballs, but I've kind of done the glint that's coming off of her eyes. And then I'm going to put in, okay, now this is kind of tricky because I could take a knife and sort of shave down, which is what I think I might do. I think I might shave down this to a point a little bit. So I'm going to shave my Prismacolor New Pastel to a little bit more of a point, because you can't really get hyper detail with these fat sticks. Okay, sort of a point. I don't want to shave off too much, but I want to get enough point where I can just get in here. Okay. First of all, I think I'm going to smudge my drawing, because you can probably see my hands. They're just completely covered. And I often rest my hand on my pastel drawing. So I'm going to use, this is called a maul stick. Great tool. And I use it in oil painting. And I use it where I don't want to rest my hand on my drawing or my painting. And I need something to steady it when I get in tight on something as precise as doing her eye. And it's coming together. It may look a little weird for just until the eye is complete. This actually is a great time to introduce your pastel pencils if you have them. Your pastel pencils are awesome for pulling out detail when you want it. I would not recommend using pastel pencils for your entire piece, because you'd be at it a very, very long time. And you might end up getting tighter than you want to get if that's not what you're going for. If that's what you're going for, then that's fine. But if you're really not wanting to get uber tight, I would not recommend doing an entire drawing unless it's super small with pastel pencils. Sorry, I'm adjusting my mic. That's why I'm moving around. Sorry. It's kind of falling off the back of my head. I think it's made for a bigger person. So, I'm a really short person. I'm only 5 feet tall. And I think I like a really small hat size, so I can tell this is really made for a bigger person. But that's okay. We'll go with it. All right. Now, maul stick. That's where I was. Okay, I'm readjusting back. So, I mean, we are kind of nearing the completion of this study, at least, of Michaela. I'm not going to treat this as a finished piece because this is really a demonstration on how to approach a pastel painting. And then we're in just a few minutes. Like I said, if you're just joining us, I'm doing this pastel demo. And then we're going to jump right into oil painting because this is the great bridge between pastel drawing or pastel painting is a perfect bridge between painting and drawing. And I hope to some degree we've sort of demystified it, and in the sense that I know that some people just don't even know where to begin with color. Now, do you see what I just did here? I just made something that's a little bit too warm, but I could go in and warm that up. Her eyebrow to me is just a little too warm. Too cool. I didn't mean warm. I meant cool. With that indigo blue, the beauty of pastels, you can kind of go in and take another color, blend it, tone it down. So like I said, we're nearing completion of this. We're getting super close, and I think we are almost ready here. So I had mentioned that we live in this 21st century. Use whatever tool you can that is at your disposal. And I often tell my students, take an iPhone shot or whatever a cell phone you have. Take a snapshot of your work and then look at it. It's like stepping back, or it's like using a mirror where you're sort of checking out your work to see if, hey, is this working? Is this, what do I need to adjust? And when it reduces it to the size of a thumbnail, your distortions are revealed. Or sometimes you may think, oh, this looks amazing, and then you take a snapshot of it and like, oh, okay, I need to put a little bit more contrast here, or a little bit more contrast there. So I feel pretty good about this, and I think that I'm going to leave this right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rearrange a bit, and now I'm going to go into oil painting. But I didn't spend time doing her outfit, but we just spent an hour doing... yeah, it's just a little over an hour, just like 63 minutes doing this demo. And I was talking the whole time, so I hope you aren't sick of the sound of my voice. But now we're going to move on to oil painting. And so just give us a second, and we're going to sort of adjust. We're going to readjust things. So I'm going to move this. I'm going to slide this guy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move. Okay. I was telling you that oh, that would be awesome. Okay, this is probably a good time to do it. So bear with us a second. You guys can take a break. Michaela, I think we've gone for an hour, so why don't you take a 5-minute break? And guys, remember where she is, okay? So when she comes back, you can tell her if she needs to readjust so that it's going to be where you left off, okay? So we're going to take 5, and we're going to fix the mic. All right. Here we go. Okay. All right. In the meantime... Sorry, I might be getting stuff on my hands. Oh, snap. It did pop.
size smaller if it needs to.
Okay. There we go. No, oh, there goes the thing. All right.
Does that feel better or do you want smaller?
No, it's actually, it's good. It's good. That feels tons more snug. Okay. Thank you. How's it going? Are you pulled in pretty tight? All right, to the demo part? You been going in and out? Oh, good. Okay. Oh, good. Okay. All right. Maybe I better follow the directions this time on these commands. I thought this was a good idea, but I apparently am challenged at doing this. Okay, the red side. I did that right. Okay. All right. All right. Okay. Okay. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. Awesome. Are you able to get the palette? Are you in? Is it in right now? What about this? Could you see? Am I blocking or are we okay? Kind of blocking? Do you want me to move it over? Just look. Okay. Actually, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to move this. I'm blocking my palette. Okay, I'll move the palette slightly. I'll move it out slightly. Or do you want to move the camera on that to that angle? Or is that not good? Probably not at this point. You're taped down. Okay. All right. Okay. Got my drink. Are we okay? Oh, yay! Yes. Yes. I just what I did is I kind of just put them in. I held them in reserve for later because I felt like if I needed to warm it up, sometimes all I needed to do was warm up along the edge, and then it somehow changed the whole color relationship and warmed up that whole area without really doing the whole area. So sometimes that's all you need to do is sort of touch it. You just got to hold your reds in reserve. And they'll sort of do the job because red is, it just will pop. It will pop. Yes.
I'm modeling tonight, right? Not tomorrow night?
Yeah, I think so. Yes. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Great.
I just want to make sure I know so that I know
Okay.
when to be here and
Okay.
folds on her clothing or whatever, by all means do that. I say use technology. There are a lot of artists who will not use photography. And I use photography, but I'm not a photorealist. I use it to sort of inform my process. And I use it, I don't use it as my crutch per se. I use it as a Now, if you're following all of the steps that I had said that might help you with getting proportion, such as make sure that you're not moving your head and that you're flicking your eye back and forth. You know, there's so many, it's so easy to to resort to, you know, old habits if we're used to just looking at if we're looking more at our drawing and our painting more than we are at the model, that can happen, then some distortions can happen. Now, all along the way, I was sort of nudging, making adjustments. That's what you kind of have to do. There's going to be some things that I'm going to have to fix as I'm going. So fix them as you're going. You can talk. It's all right. All right. Yeah, that's great. Fantastic. Okay. So, we're kind of moving on to our next segment in this demo. I just did a demo right here, an a chalk pastel or Prismacolor New Pastel painting or drawing. Some people call these drawings paintings because you actually approach pastels similarly to a painting. And we're doing oil painting. We're not doing acrylic. We're doing oil painting today. And I am showing the relationship of drawing to painting and the approach and how it's very similar. And so, okay, what I've done here, you notice that I've used this, I've used color. I love color. I like starting on color. That's sort of my thing, but of course, you don't have to start on a color background. You can start on, but I would, however, recommend either starting on a tinted canvas or paper that is not white, preferably a canvas or a paper that's sort of a medium value, maybe not too light. I use caution, saying, you know, don't go too light, even though it's colored. If you go too light, sometimes your colors won't pop enough, your highlights might not pop enough, and so you can see, like, this was a pretty good color choice in terms of making your colors pop, making your highlights pop. And so what I've done here is that Chloe, thank you, Chloe, for I asked her if she could tint my canvas, and then what I did is I had bought this acrylic paint. I love to use. I use sometimes whatever is in the house. Like I've got house latex paint, and I've got spare cans of it, and I probably have more cans than I should admit. I should be embarrassed to admit how much I have in terms of latex paint. But I've got these cans of latex paint, and I use them sometimes. I can't attest to their archival quality, but they make great underpainting, and I end up invariably painting over all of it. So hopefully it's not going to fade at the rate, you know, sometimes latex paint fades. It will fade, like if you ever paint your house and then you have to like fix a ding in your wall a few years later but find it doesn't match because it's faded. Well, so I at least try and paint over most of the surface area, but it's a great starting place for me because I just like to knock out that white.
Now, there are artists who like to work wet on wet with their oil. What I mean by wet on wet is that they they'll take they'll dilute their oil paint with either thinner or oil painting medium, and then they just take and make sort of they take their like umber color, their raw umber or their burnt umber, and then they'll rub it into their canvas. And I personally don't like using wet on wet. That's a personal preference. Some people just love doing it, and for me, I don't like to do it because whatever color I grab, I want it to be the exact same color that I put down, and if I'm picking up some color underneath that's making it muddy, it frustrates me. So this approach, it works for me, and so now the approach that I'm doing is a very direct approach. I do very minimal underpainting, and what I mean by underpainting is it's the drawing that I'm going to do in oil paint underneath. I don't really spend a ton of time doing it. There are lots of artists who will draw on their canvas. They'll either draw in charcoal or they'll draw in maybe it's a waxy China marker, or sometimes they'll use a graphite, and then they'll have to seal it so it doesn't muddy up their colors, or they use charcoal or something. And I'm a very impatient person, and so I kind of like to bypass that step altogether. I like drawing, I love drawing, but I kind of want to just get to it. And this is a very direct approach. And so if a lot of students come to me when they want to loosen up, they want to not get too tight. Don't get too tight too fast. Okay. If you really want to have a loose painting, if you're getting tight too early, you're gonna have a tight painting, and then you're gonna be like, oh, it's a point of no return. And so you want to avoid that. Okay. So I'm gonna just maybe suggest an approach here that I'm doing. I'm not saying paint like me. I'm just perhaps showing you some things where you can bypass certain steps that might actually be unnecessary and that actually might hinder you. Yes, go ahead, Navi. A color? Add highlights? Sorry. At what point do you decide? I do start out loose. I'm sorry, Navi. I'm going to end up repeating your question so that the people who are watching, they won't be able to hear you. So I'm going to repeat your question. So go ahead. At what point do you start to draw tightly? I kind of try and hold back as long as possible. Did you see how, like, on this drawing, I really held back on the eyes? That's almost like the last thing I do. And that prevents me. Sometimes if you do the eyes first, you get really tight, and then when you start to introduce the hair, and you're like going, oh, wait a minute, I thought my eyelashes were dark enough, or I made the hair too dark, and so it throws off the way the eyes look, and so we can throw things if you do things too tight, too quickly, and too myopically. So consider the whole first. Consider the whole. Stay as loose. Now, when I say loose, I mean not married to those exact lines. If you need to adjust them later, which invariably is going to happen, you have to make allowances for that, and not to be so like loath to make those adjustments if they really need to happen. Does that make sense? So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and start. All right, so I started out with this tinted canvas and it's dry. I'm not going to do wet on wet. What I have here, I should probably tell you a little bit about the colors that I have on my palette. Now, I probably am not going to use every color here, but this is sort of these are sort of my paints that I put out just in case I do want them. But for those of you who are using the paints that I provided, I think the ones that we have included are either titanium white, or I actually have permalba white. The difference between the whites are some are more cool, some are more warm, some of them have a linseed oil content, which is going to be your binder for most oil paints. It's going to be something like linseed oil. It's ground pigment in linseed oil, or it's in poppy seed oil, and they have different drying times. And the reason why even though I have titanium white here, that's linseed oil, but permalba white, it uses it, I forget actually, I'd have to go read the label of what, I don't know if it's safflower oil, I'd have to check. I don't want to tell you something wrong, but it doesn't yellow as much. So if you're looking for a white that won't yellow over time, a good choice is Weber Permalba white. And so that's on the table. We have alizarin crimson, which is, oh my goodness, it's sort of running into my other color. I went vertical with my palette here. Can you see? Is it on camera okay? Okay. So I have this alizarin crimson, which is a nice go-to color for flesh tones. And then you would probably mix that, as we talked about earlier. We talked about flesh tone with pastel. It's some of the same principles apply here. That's kind of the reason why I did both drawing and painting. Actually, what I should probably do, can I ask you to just put these up here with these magnets kind of on the other side? I'll put this up here and so that I can always refer to it and I don't have to keep holding it. Okay, so you want to just grab these? Yeah, just grab those. Thank you so much, Sam. Okay. I'm going to slide this over just a teeny bit so he has some room. Do you have enough room? Okay. All right. We have, I said, alizarin crimson. We have titanium white. We have burnt umber. We have, I think I got Prussian blue for you guys. That's a really nice blue. And I got Naples yellow, and which is right here. There's a yellow ochre right here. And there is, there's a few other colors. I might have included a violet color here, but the rest of the colors are kind of like icing. And but those are kind of some of your essential colors. I think I did cadmium yellow. It's probably a medium cadmium yellow on there. That is your classic oil palette right there. And you can do so much with just those colors alone. And like I said, all these other ones that I kind of love, I love turquoise. You'll see a lot of turquoise in my paintings. And I have an awesome turquoise here, is Cobalt Teal by Gamblin. It makes that color. And there's certain colors that I like by certain manufacturers that everybody universally just loves this Cobalt Teal. It's sort of just this happy color. It's awesome. And I've sort of also included here this other color that I've discovered is kind of this, it's a misty blue, and I'm trying to see if I can't find who makes it. Here it is. It's by, I think it's Holbein. Holbein makes this misty blue, which I find it's sometimes hard to get a really nice, like icy blue color that does what I want. And then another thing that I love to use, okay, is I'm going to show you a lot of this. Sometimes this is completely new to people that they've never used them before, but I absolutely adore R&F pigment sticks. And out of all of the oil, you'll see oil bars out there. Basically, it's like oil paint on a stick. And I love this color. I use it so much in my painting when I'm using some cool lights. Yes, I have a question. Go ahead. Okay, this is cerulean extra pale blue. and it's made by RF Pigment Sticks, RF Pigments, and it's pigment sticks, which is considered an, I don't know why, because that sounds waxier, but it's really buttery. It's like lipstick. It's awesome. And there are other oil bars out there I've tried that are just too waxy, and they don't really have the same consistency. So this is my choice when I go to use it. Another color that I love to use, crazy as it is, I love Dianthus Pink. I just think it's just awesome because I can do some really cool things with flesh tone. And I'll show you in a minute too what I'm talking about and how I use them. You're like, how in the heck am I going to use them? I also use Jean Brilliant, or John. It's spelled, yeah, it's like brilliant yellow. You can see it's well used, and they kind of get this film on there, so I'm gonna have to like take a rag and wipe off the. They get really messy. I should have brought my gloves, but they're just gonna get everywhere because they're just so. It's like painting with a stick of butter. But they're awesome. I love them. I love them. And you'll see how I'm going to use them. Another color that I like to use with the RF pigment sticks is extra pale yellow. And I've used it tons. It's now just a teeny stub right here. So, okay. So like my drawing that I did earlier today, that probably was that was an hour long study. And I'm going to do the same setup so you can see the relationship and the approach and how similar it is. I'm approaching it like drawing. And so, okay, just a word about brushes and what I'm grabbing, because sometimes grabbing the wrong brush can just make or break what you're trying to do. You gotta pick the right brush for to do the right job. And right now, early on, I like to pick these round brushes. I used to avoid rounds until I watched Steve Houston paint. If you're not familiar with Steve Houston, it's spelled Huston, and I'm pretty sure he uses rounds. And pretty sure he uses filberts too. They're different shape brushes. And a filbert is, I'll show you the shape of the filbert. This is a filbert right here. It's not quite a flat, but it kind of has this round top like this, but it's actually sort of flat, but it's tapered. I love angled brushes. I love angled brushes. I can get great edges. I can get a nice clean edge, and I can get detail with an angled brush. And these are also fairly stiff to medium stiff, because when you're doing oil paints, you got to have a brush that isn't a wimpy brush that's not going to push your paint around. So, sable is only good because it's so soft if you're doing detail and you've thinned quite a bit with your thinner. So, but these are, I'm pretty much a direct painter that I don't really use like your very soft brushes unless I'm like barely taking these brushes that are pretty stiff. So we're talking about like a hog's, like a synthetic hog or synthetic mongoose, or these Catalyst makes these polytip brushes, which I really, really like. Okay, so right now I am going to go ahead. I have just thinner. I'm not using oil medium for this demo. The purpose of oil medium, because it can be a mystery, it can be a mystery, or it's just totally new to people, oil painting, is that you don't want to break down your pigment so much with thinner that it's just going to be runny, and then it's not going to bind to your surface. But I don't thin my paint so much. I either use it straight up, or I use a very, very little thinner. Yes, go ahead, Carrie. When do you use a dryer? I don't ever need to use dryer, because the interesting thing is I don't actually paint super thick. There might be parts that are a little bit thick, but I kind of an impatient painter. I just kind of want to get it done, and it's not like thick applications of paint. There might be some texture in there, but I don't use dryer. The reason why I say when using medium, use medium with caution, because I used to use medium, but it used to be so distracting. The different, like, you get some really glossy spots, or really, you get shiny spots, and then you get some that aren't shiny, and that's very distracting. So you can get mediums. There are a few. I think Grumbacher might make a matte medium. There's some out there that are more matte that you won't have that. But I also don't like to use a medium with Damar varnish. Your classic oil medium is going to have linseed oil in it. It's going to have a thinner, like turpentine, and then it's going to have, I'm probably saying Damar wrong. I've heard it pronounced so many different ways, but I'm just going to say Damar. Damar varnish. Damar will add to the gloss, but it tends to yellow over time, and I don't really like it. And it's shiny, and it's a distraction to me personally as a painter. And I have never been able to master that formulation, so I just make it more simple. Tons of painters are out there, and they just use it direct. You don't have to use a medium, but if you're really trying, a medium is good if you're actually doing more glazing techniques, probably, so that you could have a transparent quality to them. But I don't add anything. The reason why I'm only using thinner, I use it sparingly, and just sufficiently enough, but I use it I'm just doing a very direct painting, and the thinner also accelerates the drawing. I don't feel like I have to add a drawing accelerator, but transporting this home can be a trick for people. But I find that if you're going to go and visit your painting again and come and do another pass at it in a couple of days and use dryer on it, you've used dryer on it later in the day, it really bothers me when it gets tacky. The dryer will make the paint tacky, and then that ends up being, then I'm starting to fight with the consistency of the paint, and I don't like to do that. So that's just my approach to mediums. Like I said, my painting is pretty direct. This approach is pretty direct. So what you're going to see is going to be a finished painting. We're going to be done here in 2 hours, or 2.5 hours. And no, sorry, 1.5 hours. Am I correct? Okay, so I think we can do it. So I've grabbed my angle brush. Now we're beginning at last. Okay, I said be careful about getting too much thinner. I grabbed a little bit too much, because it's going to just totally run down my palette here. Just to let you know, this is a great, if you just want a palette paper, this is Gray Matters. It's a nice neutral color instead of just using white. And then you get a better, I don't know, it just makes your colors pop right there. I just really like using those. My friend Jonathan Linton introduced me to those, to Gray Matters. Okay, so I have already done something that I didn't want to do. I think I'm going to move it over. Now, I just jumped right in without giving that preamble again. We talked about composition with our drawing where we moved her, and so I'm going to actually do a similar composition because this is the exact same setup, and a lot of these students here that they are just doing the same painting that they began earlier, but unlike myself, and I'm just beginning a whole new demo. Okay, so what I grabbed here is, again, this umber color. I should ask the students, okay, is she looking in the right place? Is it this exact same setup? When you work with models and we take breaks, I always ask the students to pipe in so that they get the model to return to the exact same position that they were at, because it will be a source of frustration later if you're too timid to pipe up because you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings about oh, well, she needs to move a millimeter to the left or whatever. And it can totally make a difference on your painting, and it can also wreck your painting if you decide to change it part way and change the point of view. So again, if you're just joining us and you didn't see the earlier demo, basically what I'm doing right now is I am mapping, and I'm going to stay really loose. And some of the key to likeness, and this is for Carrie Brotherson, who asked me this earlier, as something to address, is like, how do you really capture likeness? And some of the tips that I'm going to give will sort of help solve some technical problems that you might have. And one of which is that if you'll notice, we've spent a lot of time setting up. And in that setting up, I have made sure that the only thing that really is moving back and forth in my eyes, my head's not really moving. I'm in a good spot where I'm pretty comfortable. I'm really comfortable. And I am looking at my canvas. The only time you see me turn is if I'm like turning towards my palette. And I'm kind of set up a ways so that just sort of to accommodate this whole video setup. So I'm kind of having to turn a little bit. But my palette is right here, and my solvents are right here. So, but by and large, that's really the only turning that I'm doing. But other than that, my eyes are going to be mostly on the model and not nearly as much on my canvas. My eyes are flicking back and forth. Okay? Sorry, did I say that backwards? My eyes? Yeah, your eyes should really be on the model. I did say it right. And stay loose early on, because guess what? You will have to make adjustments. Even I have to make adjustments later on. That's why if you stay loose, you're not married to the marks that you've made, that you're perfectly willing to make adjustments. If you need to make adjustments, it's going to happen. Just embrace it. Don't be afraid to make marks, because you can paint over them. But I am staying really loose. I'm staying loose just like I did in my drawing. I'm approaching this underpainting. Do you guys see the similarity already in the approach? Actually, I'm going to switch to my round. I was using an angled brush because I love cutting in with my angled brush. Love it, love it, love it. Sorry, I keep turning this way thinking my palette's right here. I'm not used to working with my palette being vertical. It's old habit. But I'm doing it vertical for the sake of this demo. So I'm just got to get it into my head so I don't have to turn so much. I'm like, where's my palette? It should be right next to me, but really it's vertical. It's staying loose. Round brushes also kind of help you stay kind of loose if they're kind of a medium size. This one right here is a size 4, and it comes to a nice point. This is a titanium brush. This is actually a very nice brush. It's a Robert Simmons number 4 titanium. It's Very nice brush. And it's appropriate for this size canvas. This is an 18 by 24 canvas. You're not only do you pick the right brush for the right type of job, but also the right size of canvas that you've got here. If you've got like a big canvas, you might have to pick bigger brushes to cover enough of the area. You can't possibly comfortably paint with a teeny tiny brush. At least, well, I know I can't. Now, I paint with an sort of this overhanded style. I hold it like a pencil. But I was watching a demo by Steve Houston, who is an amazing figure artist. And I noticed that he often holds his brush like this. And he's kind of doing this underhanded thing and does this. And he just, you can't help but stay loose. If you really want to not get tight, try switching how you hold your brush. And he does this very loose quality. You know, he has this really, really loose quality to his work that is just, but it's spot on and it's beautiful. So check him out. His you can Google him, Steve Houston. It's Huston, and he does demos online. There's newmastersacademy.org. You do have to pay, however, like there's an annual fee, or maybe it's per demo, depending on if it's a live stream. But you guys watching on the internet are kind of lucky because this one's free. All right, so I'm constantly checking. I'm flicking my eye back and forth. I know I'm going to need to make some adjustments. I already see one. A rag is kind of handy. This is something that you can't do in pastel painting. You can't really rub out. You can actually take a little bit of thinner and rub out something that you didn't like. But it's really not going to, this early, I don't really have to rub out because I can just paint over it. You'll see that in a minute. What I mean, I'm gonna hit some color hard and fast in a minute. And I'm really not going to worry so much about values right then there. That's probably the biggest difference between oil painting and oil and chalk pastel. On the chalk pastel, I did a little bit of underdrawing and I did a little bit of the value underneath so that a ghost of it would show through when I blocked in my flesh tone. And to some degree I can do that, but it's going to probably get sort of wiped out. I will, however, map out where the eyes go. I'm going to map out where the features are, and that enough is going to be my guide. But I'm really not going to stress about detail. But as long as I feel like I've got the bare bones in place, and I feel good about their placement, and I feel good about, see, I'm feeling like I can make some adjustments here. I think the approach that I'm showing you, again, I did that habitual thing where I turned and I thought my palette was right next to me. Okay, palette's vertical. Palette's vertical. I got to keep telling myself that. Okay. I like to cover enough area fast so that you leave enough of it loose so that and you've got enough of it on your canvas so that if you need to pull back and just stop and keep and maintain a very loose quality, you're able to do that because you have enough of a painting indicated because I think that's really the hard part, is artists really don't know when to stop. It's like, oh no, I've passed the point of no return and I've overworked it and I've killed it and I should have just stopped like 3 hours ago. Anybody ever have that feeling in this group? Oh, yeah. Yeah, we got a lot of artists who, I think that's just a universal experience, that you don't want to overwork a painting where you just lose the magic. And when it's looking forced, if it's looking contrived, and you're fighting with something, then it's time to either step back. And sometimes that means you need to like maybe put it away for a day or two and come back to it. Maybe even longer. But if you leave it too long, I will say I've had many an unfinished painting that's in my studio that I have not gone back to. So if you plan on finishing it, it's probably not a good thing to let it sit for too long, or just, if you're just not going to get to it, then embrace that and just say, okay, I'm not going to get to it, and just move on. Because there's just some paintings that you just can't fix. And I've had that experience too. And sometimes you have to have your share of those to know later on, okay, I learned from this experience, and I learned not to do this, and I learned not to do that. Okay. All right. So what I'm kind of feeling good about just placement, and so now we are getting ready to address flesh tone. Now, as with this, it's going to look really kind of crazy, so don't panic. It's going to look crazy for a little bit, because I should tell myself not to panic. I should be the one to panic. I'm the one who's on camera. But if I make a really bad gaffe. But okay, I've grabbed here my oil bars, and this is where I use them. So what I've done is they tend to get a film on them, and I've kind of wiped the film off. So if you guys if any of you who want to come around and watch this, I would say now's a good time to like move and just kind of watch. Unless, of course, you want to just keep working and then watch the demo later on YouTube. But, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and this is where it's so similar to oil painting. You can maybe come around. It's okay if you cross in front of the camera for a sec. It's fine. So, how many students do we have in here right now, Carrie? Where'd Carrie go? We have about 15 people in here. It's a really fun size group. We're in a great space. We're here at SVU. If you didn't know that and you're just joining us, we're at Southern Virginia University, and we're in the dance studio. It's an awesome space. High ceilings, wood floors, big windows, and we have actually a mirror over here. It's just a neat place. Okay, so. All right, so I'm just going to, see, I told you this is why I'm not married to what I've drawn underneath. It basically is kind of a placeholder. I can see a ghost of it underneath where the eye was, but I didn't it's not hurting my feelings if I'm going over it. Okay, you can see it's pretty rough, but you see, I was able to cover a lot of surface area fast. That's what you get when you're an impatient painter like myself. You just need I just need to cover some surface area fast. There are some benefits to that. The reason why there's some benefits to using oil bars is that you can kind of homogenize your color. I would say one of the biggest problems in my own experience, here, what I'm using now is I'm just using a little bit of Mona Lisa thinner to sort of blend it. And I'm just sort of homogenizing the flesh tone, okay? So oil bars. Oh yeah, they're awesome. Look at that, just really fast, and it's really buttery. Some of them take longer to dry than others. Okay, but it looks super flesh tone. It's super yellow. That's because it's brilliant yellow. But we have this really rosy yellowish lighting on Michaela right here. And I'm also knocking out what's underneath. Yeah, you have to be really careful. I went a little bit too dark than I had it. Darker than I intended on the value of the tint of the canvas. But no, it's okay. I mean, it's in certain parts, it's okay. But it's kind of fun because some of it will peek through, and I can kind of leave it sort of unfinished and stuff, and it's still going to work. So that's the nice thing about oil bars is that, again, you can cover a lot of area fast. And I will say that one of the problems that you might find some frustrations, and tell me if you've ever had this experience, if you have painted a human figure before, but you've gone and done the flesh color, and then you ran out of that color. You've run out of that color, and then you go to remix it, and you can't quite get it the same. And then it's like, and then you start like having all these weird strokes because you're trying to fix it, and then things start to look tight and contrived. So this is sort of one way to sort of bypass that. So I kind of block that in. Now the next area that I want to block in is, I sort of want to do the hair. I kind of want to block in. So here I am going to, here we go. I'm grabbing my palette knife here. So I'm going to maybe mix some color. But now I would say that if, consider the surface, the amount of area that you're going to be covering. So you want to mix enough of a color that you're not going to run out. So in other words, if you're going to be doing flesh tone and you want to, this is just a base. This is going to be, it's going to be altered, but this is just a base right here. Trust me, she's not going to look so yellow when I'm done. You want to mix enough of a pot of color so you don't have to keep remixing and reinventing and remixing and reinventing. You want to mix enough of a color appropriate to your area that you're going to work on. And so I'm kind of, this is not a precise science, okay? So I am just grabbing, that's probably a little bit more than I needed there. You want to wipe before you dip your a fresh color. I'm actually working on the color of her hair right now. And again, this is sort of an approximation. You could take your palette knife, you can hold it up to see if you like it. Okay. Some people swear by not mixing with their brushes, but I tend to do it to some degree. This is a nice medium value. There's some darker spots that I'm going to end up pulling out. But ultimately, again, everything that you paint it's going to be about color relationships. And I said this in the last drawing demo that, okay, the color, whatever colors you pick, they have to sit in the same universe. They have to be able to be, like, your red can't be some weird alien red that doesn't belong in your painting, unless it has a purpose. Every color sort of has to have a purpose, and if we're trying to replicate color, a good rule of thumb when you're trying to decide, okay, I need to, okay, her hair is blonde, but I don't want to just grab yellow. And then you have to decide, oh, okay, but it's being hit by a warm light. So you kind of have to sort of maybe do a little bit of experimentation, like, oh, I know that it's not blonde, but it's either going to be, okay, but her hair is maybe on this side, it's going to be cool. So you might include a hint of blue in there. Proceed with caution. However, don't just grab a ton of blue. You especially Prussian blue, phthalo blue, cobalt blue, any of those blues that you might have will just overtake. They will overtake things. So okay. So I'm just totally blocking in, staying really loose. If you've seen any of my demos, or sorry, the progress of my paintings on Instagram, have you guys seen those? You can see the step of the. This is very similar to what you see on the process. I'll like post progress pictures and then the finished product, and this is very similar in approach. Sort of a demystifying. It's a very simple approach. It's a very direct approach. See, even though I've like painted over that eye that I drew in, it doesn't hurt my feelings, because you know what? I'm okay. I'm okay with it because I can still find where that eye is. I can find that where that eye is because I'm not moving around. I'm staying, again, fairly stationary, but I'm still relaxed. And okay, this blue that I didn't actually get to, but we're probably going to be able to get to somewhat. I'm going to mix a blue now. Now the blue has a little bit of a warm light on it. It's got this rosy light. We put a red, it's like a pink lighting gel on our light. And so everything that you paint, and the reason why I put lighting gels, especially for the students, is so that they can totally understand that, and it forces you not to reach for just blue. You're going to need to mix it with something so it fits into this warm, rosy universe that's on your canvas. That's going to be on your canvas. So, of course, this warm, rosy universe is just with the figure so far. And let's not neglect some of the negative space here. So I'm also going to start indicating maybe a little bit. I'm just going to grab some of this color right here, and I'm going to just sort of to indicate that there's something behind. Like she's got this blue damask chair that she's on. Now, in the amount of time that we have left, because we're going to go for one more hour, I'm not going to do a completely full painting of this. For this demo, I will do as much as I can. I'll probably hone in on just part of it. If I am going to do a painting of it later, if I want to come back and finish it, do a more finished version of it, I will take pictures of the setup. So, all right. So. Now this blue, like I said, this blue right here needs to fit in the right universe. So I'm going to mix. I'm going to grab, oh, I thought I put some cerulean blue on there, but I don't have the tube cerulean blue. But I'm going to approximate. I'm going to use a bit of this Prussian blue. I'm going to use some white. Again, don't forget to wipe in between. If you're just going to muddy up your colors if you don't. And I know that I could be mixing a whole lot more. I just told you that you need to mix enough paint approximate to the surface area that you know you need to cover. So you, like I said, you got to mix enough. But I am not, for the sake of this demonstration, hold on, let me straighten out my palette a little bit here, which is held up by magnets. That's very white. But we're gonna add more Prussian blue. Prussian blue is a warm blue, warmer, I should say, than ultramarine. It's warmer than cobalt. And what I see in front of me is a little bit more warm. And guess what we have here too? It's also got this rosy lighting in it too. So I could do one of two things. I could rosy it up with some paints, or I can maybe introduce that warmth with my oil bars and blend it in. And I'm going to show you, I'm actually going to do my oil bars. So I'm going to go ahead and just, I'm going to that was probably the, this is probably as thick as it gets. If you really wanted to do some thick effects, use your knife. And you can actually get some really nice knife effects and everything. But I told you I was going to sort of, I want this to sit a little bit more in that, it's a darker blue actually. So I'll probably just go in and I can blend that a little bit. But I'm going to go in here a little bit with my oil bars and just warm it up a little bit, or so that it starts to sit in the same universe. And then I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to blend it a little bit. But you'll have to wipe off your oil bars too if you do that. And then I'm going to grab a little bit more of this blue here and I actually think it needs a little bit more of alizarin here. Now, alizarin crimson is kind of a cooler red. Okay, we're staying really loose here because I've used a knife. It's staying really loose, and I'm okay with that. I'm actually thinking, hey, I'm going with it. I like what's happening. Sometimes you'll find that it's kind of like, oh, I didn't exactly intend for it to be like that, but I think I like it, and keep it. So, okay, this is uber loose, but I'm going to kind of leave it for now because I can come back to it in a little bit. I can darken this as I go. I think it needs to sort of, in some of the areas, it has some shadows that are deeper, or sort of this, the folds and everything. So Carrie, I just told you that I don't use a thick application of paint. And in this case, I did, but that's okay. You kind of just go with it, and some applications can be thicker at times than others, but just kind of going with it. And I'm just sort of letting things happen here with the paint. That were unintentional, but kind of ended up being kind of cool. So I'm just gonna, okay. So now on to the, okay, we have an hour. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to start going back and putting in some of her features. I'm still reaching for that umber because I'm going to go in and sort of define things. I'm using this angled brush. It's a number 3 angled brush, and it's an angle shader. Let's see who makes this. Master's Touch. This one is one that it's a cheap brush that you get from Hobby Lobby. All my angled brushes are really cheap brushes that you can get anywhere. You can get at Michael's. I go through them like crazy. I'm really hard on them, but I like what you can do with them. I like the control. They're not necessarily meant for oil paints, but well, this one is. It's a synthetic hog brush, which means it's kind of a stiff bristle. And I love it because you can get really nice line with it, and you get nice control. And I love it. I'm actually going to grab some of like a little bit of this. I think I'm maybe going to grab a cooler blue. There's a little bit of ultramarine. Put that in here so I can make this line in the back pop a little bit more. Now you'll notice that I don't use black. For those of you who kind of joined us a little bit late, I kind of talked a little bit earlier about I don't actually use black. I make black by mixing colors. There's a way to do that. You can mix depending on if you want a warm black or a cool black. I would mix my Prussian blue with alizarin crimson and sometimes Viridian. If I had phthalo blue on here, I would mix it with phthalo, and then I'd mix it with my my raw umber. And you could get a nice, rich, dark color that's going to have enough contrast. Black, I apologize if you've watched this whole thing, but chances are people's attention spans are, they probably only watch part of it, tune in to only part of this. So some of the things I may say might be redundant, but black tends to sort of just pop too much. If you use it straight up, and even if you mix it into your colors, it just can take over and it makes things muddy. And I don't use it, and it almost looks like I use black, because look at that. Doesn't that look like black? So anyway, what I'm doing here right now is I'm now mapping out her features. Okay. And just going in and starting to define things. I'm going to just spend only a very short amount of time just going back and remapping where her eye was, which I ended up painting over, as you remember, just so that I can give some placement. And this raw umber that I'm using is kind of a nice, if there's any go-to color, it's not a bad choice. It's a pretty good go-to color for just mapping things out. Raw umber tends to blend very well. Sorry, burnt umber. I kept saying raw umber, but really what I have is burnt umber. Burnt umber is warmer than raw umber. Raw umber is like a sort of an olivey brown, gray brown. So if I say that, I apologize if I misled you. There is enough of a difference for those who paint that. Sorry, don't be up in arms if I said it wrong. I really meant the other. It's a subtle difference. And one tends to have more contrast. I tend to use burnt umber more just because it has a little bit more contrast in it than raw umber. Raw umber, like I said, is kind of more of a gray-brown. Okay, so I'm going in and I'm doing some basic mapping again, just because I've blocked in that area. And then after this point, then I go and start adding some values. You know, even at this point, I did say that you're going to need to make adjustments, and that's going to happen. That's going to happen along the way. You're just going to, that's just the way things go. And if you're really looking for likeness, one of my students, Navi, had asked, so how do you, what was your question again about mapping? And did you had a question about proportion? Right, okay, so proportion, you're gonna just need to make adjustments as you go. It's just, that's the way. You just ever nudge it closer to where you want it. Like I'm already seeing, oh, I'm flicking my eye back and forth, and I see that maybe this difference right here, I'm going to just nudge it a little bit to, I see that her neck really comes in a little bit closer, and that this right here is like here, and then I go in and I sort of end up fixing things. I mean, being careful, of course you're going to be careful all the way through. You're going to be hopefully you're making adjustments along the way, so there's nothing too big and too drastic that you're gonna change up. Again, I like these RF pigments because they're just nice and buttery. They will, some of them take forever to dry though. Like that pale yellow takes forever to dry. And probably not a great choice for a workshop that you're only doing in 3 days and you have to transport it several hundred miles and you throw it in the back of your car. You just might end up getting it all over. You know, you might get pale, extra pale yellow, that's the color. Extra pale yellow on everything. It's not pretty. So, all right. So, we talked a little bit about complement, but we just barely touched on colors and how they relate to each other. And sometimes, like this, her skin right now is really, this underpainting right here that I blocked in is really yellow. So I kind of have to you know, we have to, and there are certain strategies to that. Now, Dasha, who is, she asked me earlier about reds, and sometimes, and I think basically adding red, and you're holding back on your reds a little. You have to be very, very careful because red will take over. Sometimes all you have to do is indicate just a hint of red here, a hint of red there, And that's sort of enough to warm up that flesh tone, and all of a sudden it changes the relationship. And I'm just gonna explain that right now because I just picked up a little bit of. I have a teeny bit of cadmium red that I'm gonna it's gonna end up blending with what I have. That's the thing that I like about this RF pigments. It's so buttery that when you take a color, you could take something straight and blend it in right here, and then it ends up being this cool kind of neat blended thing. And I'm starting to add value right now, and I've taken a little bit of cadmium, maybe a little bit of alizarin crimson, and all of a sudden you see like the color relationships changing. I'm warming things up a little bit so she doesn't look so jaundiced, but it's like starting to make sense. It's starting to make like, okay, yes, it fits this color universe. And then some cool things are starting to happen. And starting to like where it's going. Right now I'm spending a little bit of time on the values. Now this base color has got to be, again, when I mean a medium value, it's got to be something that's right kind of in the middle in terms of your value scale, that it's going to be light enough to be a flesh tone, but not so light that you can't add highlights to it to make them pop and come forward, and not dark, not too dark so that you can't darken the shadows. And whoa. Right now I'm using an angled shader brush. It's one of my go-to brushes. If you're looking for something that you can get detail, I tend to have a little bit of trouble controlling detail on a teeny tiny round brush, which is what your brain will tell you that's what you need to reach for. Instead of this angled brush, but believe it or not, you really can and go in and get detail. I could turn it on its side and get a pinprick with this angled brush. It's awesome. I started to introduce value, and now I'm paying a little bit of attention to shadows. Right now. And then in just a minute, I'm going to... How's your leg? Are you okay, Michaela? Are you needing a break? You're okay? Okay. All right. I'll just keep going unless you pipe up. So I know there's some, like, people are probably watching this on the internet going, oh my gosh, that green background is crazy. But I like it, so there. So ultimately, really, we're kind of knocking out that uber yellow. Sometimes I'll have my my oil bar in my hand, and then I need to just go in and grab a little bit, and I put it on my brush, and then I go in and I cut in with it. Again, I don't want you to think that I always grab this color. This color is not going to work in every situation. When I mean color, I mean that base of her flesh tone, and only because I'm only choosing this color because we picked this really warm lighting on her, and that's actually it works. So. And I think I'm going to need to get a little bit wider brush now because I'm going to be doing, I think I'll pick, yeah, I guess I'll use this one right here. I just grabbed a round brush. It's a number 4, so I can cover just a little bit more area. Like. A word of caution, and you'll probably hear this if you take any other paint class, is fat on lean. So your thinner paints are going to be like underneath, but really that kind of has a lot to do with also if you add like medium, that's adding fat. So, to it. And right now I have no other medium on my, that I'm using because, for the reasons I mentioned earlier, I know enough artists who actually paint straight up, who paint on, straight up with very little, using Mona Lisa thinner. I've experimented on my own using different mediums, and I found that working straight up works a little bit better than for me. I don't do a lot of glazing. If I do it very minimally. But this is probably much more of a direct painting. It's not going to have a bazillion layers over days and days of work. This is typically my paintings take, of a person, just like a portrait. I can do in either 1 to 2 passes. So 1 more hour is not going to be as finished as, let's say, if I were to come back to it. And there's a good chance I will come back to it, just to finish it out and post it. Okay, now I'm starting to pull some highlights. I'm starting to pull, and I'm pulling this one straight. Again, the only reason I'm pulling it straight is because of the nature of these oil bars. It's so buttery. I have no other word for it. It's so buttery that there's a lot of blending that ends up happening right on the canvas that I like, and I don't have to do a lot of pre-mixing like I did down here, which is sort of its own other effect. But for some areas like up here, I'm not gonna need to do that. So, okay. I think what I am going to do here is I am going to need a little bit rosier highlights. I think that's what I need to do, is some rosier highlights. We are using a rosy light after all, so it makes perfect sense to maybe have a little bit more of a pinkish highlight on her cheek. Yes, and that actually right there changes her complexion from being more yellow, and we start to move towards more of that sort of peachy pink. I'm not here to really prescribe a formulaic approach to mixing colors and everything. I'm just really kind of hoping that maybe, if anything, you might glean a way of like negotiating this medium, this oil painting medium, and just trying to make it work for you, and maybe bypassing some things that might end up being problematic, or you simply don't know where to begin. Where to start? You okay, Michaela? Okay. So now it's no longer just this sort of jaundicey yellow, but I am going to, right there is an important highlight. I think that needs to be a little bit more rosy. So really, ultimately, that flesh tone that I put there is just a way to, number one, knock out my background color. And if you were working white on white, you'd still have to knock out the white that's underneath. And in my case, I'm sort of knocking out the color, but I like the way putting color on a color background is, I like how just the color can pop off of, just pop off of that surface. So if you missed my comment earlier about tinting my canvas, I tend to tint my canvas because I hate fighting with the white of my canvas. Again, I know plenty of artists who just work right off a white canvas and it works for them. And it's kind of cool to see how, you know, if they ever post progress of their paintings, it's really kind of cool to see this mosaic of colors come together and make a painting. But for my own personal approach, it frustrates me more than it actually works for me. So you kind of have to find what works for you. Like I said, I really like working off of a tinted surface or a color surface. And feel free to go, and you can visit my Instagram page, which is instagram.com/rosedatoc.doll, and you'll see my crazy color palette. You'll see, but I like color, and it kind of works for me. It's kind of my own thing. I'm kind of a color addict, to be honest, if there is such a thing. Anybody who enters my house at home, my house is, the whole main level is like a robin's egg blue, turquoisey color, and I have yellow couches and red furniture and turquoise and white. It's just kind of, that sounds awful, doesn't it? That sounds really like crazy, but it kind of works, and it's kind of fun. I don't know what my world would be without color. I am watching the clock here. We have about probably a half hour more. We're in an okay place. You can kind of see some similarities here. That one's a bit rosier. The whole page is a little bit more blue. This kind of has more of it's a lot warmer on this canvas. But like I said, color is all relative. And when you start adjusting colors on your canvas, you have to adjust them in relation to each other. And you either need to add their complement, or you need to add them, you know, sort of grade toward each other. So basically, what I mean by that is, if you add the complement of a color, you add a color and its complement, they kind of tend to gray towards each other, and in some ways that sort of makes them fit in the same color universe that you're creating. And yeah. So all right, I'm now going to pick out a little bit more of the detail now that I've kind of gone in and kind of defined the values of some planes. That's another thing that the planes of her face and the way they capture the light is going to be the cues of of what color you're going to grab. And this plane is warmer than that plane, or there's a little bit on the plane under her chin. I see some reflected light that's cooler. Warmer. That's what I meant. Warmer. So ever nudging it closer and closer to her likeness. Just to let you know, in a half hour, I guess that's the end of today's demo. But you can catch us tomorrow. We're going to have another demo tomorrow at 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And maybe what I'll do is I'll kind of post progress on this. I'll show you guys a little bit what we did from today. And totally need to make that longer here. That's okay. It's okay to make adjustments. I'm still really loose. Any adjustments I make at this point, it's still okay. I'm still loose, and I hope that that's kind of where you can be in your paintings, that if you feel like you discover, oh my gosh, I need to make some adjustments, or this is really off, that there's still room for you to do that. Because really, still, this is quite loose, and I hope it's going to stay loose, because I don't want any marks on my canvas that are going to look like it's forced or contrived. That's what we want to avoid. If you go to my Instagram page, the links are on there. If you go to my Facebook page, and you're trying to figure out what link is this, I couldn't tell you because it's some crazy URL, but it is a YouTube link, so you can watch this after the fact. Once it's up on YouTube, I assume it's going to be up there. So you are able to access this demo if you kind of want to step away from it and come back to it, watch part of it later. After all, that is sort of a 3-hour block for today's demo and 3 hours for tomorrow. So you can watch it, go do something else, come back to it. So, okay, I'm going to grab my angle brush again. If you find that you're kind of starting to fight with your colors, because yeah, I do caution you that if you're going to thin your colors, you want to not thin them too much. If you put enough of an application of paint down, that then if you add too much thinner, you're going to just wipe off what's underneath. Or some things from underneath are not blending the way that you like, but are kind of are becoming muddy. That's the time for you to actually stop, let your painting dry for, if not a day. Sometimes it just depends on what you're using. Like for these RF pigment sticks, some of the colors take forever to dry, and I kind of like I might need to leave it for a couple days before I can go back to it. But if you're just kind of using thinner, and you've just done a sort of a wash underneath with some paint and some thinner, and then you can layer on top of that. And sometimes, like I said, if you're finding that you're starting to fight with it, sometimes it's just best to put it away for a day, or come back to it. And that certainly is okay to do. Sometimes it's better and healthier. Sometimes I have to do that. It probably takes me a day or two to do some of the ones that are some of my more recent posts on Instagram. If you're watching this link, if you're watching this on YouTube right now, the spelling of my name is there. So if you went to Instagram.com/Rose Datoc Dall, but I'll spell it out for you. It's RoseDatoc Dall. So you can see some of the work, and you can kind of see some of the more recent ones. Most of those have taken like a day or two. Probably no more than a couple passes. Maybe 3 at the most, but not typically. So this I said earlier that I didn't really like to do wet on wet, but in some ways what I'm doing right now is sort of wet on wet, because this base color is pretty wet, and what I'm going in is I'm sort of blending on top of it, and to that degree I'm okay with using it, but I don't really like tinting or just taking thinner and just putting over the whole surface area, or tinting it with just a smear of umber. That doesn't typically work for me very well. However, my flesh tone tends to be wet on wet. So to that end, I do like doing wet on wet. Because some neat things start happening. Are you okay, Michaela? You don't need a break? Do you need a break? Let's take a 5-minute break. You're okay? Because we actually only have about 20 minutes left So it's up to you. If you feel like you want to just go to 20 minutes, and then because we're done at 20 minutes. Okay, with at least the workshop. So I will say, bring out your iPhones, bring them out now, so that you can take shots. If you want to come back to this pose, I'm saying this to my students. You there at home probably can't do that. That's not going to work. I don't know exactly how you would do that at home. But yeah, so people are going to be moving around and taking shots of the model. Now is a great time to do that. I will be doing that myself, but I probably will be using my other camera, my good cam. So. So I am using, again, this angled shader. It's really awesome for cutting into detail and getting lines. I tend to have a very graphic style, so you're just going to have to bear with my my edges. I'm an edge girl. I like my edges. I love to. I like the element of line, and I if I could liken my brushstroke to anything, I like these angled brushes because it's almost like calligraphy. And so it's kind of like that. They're kind of, my lines tend to be calligraphic. And so if you kind of like that, you might like this angled brush. You might like doing that. For some people absolutely hate it. But it's got to, it's worth experimenting around with different brushes, and everybody's going to find their favorite brush. Everybody's going to have their favorite thing. And I'm kind of going to go as long as I'm just going to keep going with this. I'm actually not going to break right now to take pictures. I'll do that at the end, so that I can just keep doing this demo for you, to just keep you up on the progress. So nudging, nudging, nudging it ever closer to her likeness. That's the process. And as long as you've built the framework for it, then that actually can happen. And in the proper natural course of things. And adjusting and readjusting, and that's okay, as long as it's, hopefully your framework is such that you can do that and not make any having to make major changes that completely have altered, because all along the way you will have been making adjustments. Adjustments here and there. So again, we're closing down the video live stream in 15 minutes, or a little bit less than 15 minutes. But be sure to come back tomorrow. We're going to be doing another demo. Tomorrow I am really going to hit it hard with portraiture. I'm kind of doing that right now, somewhat, but we're going to actually have 2 models tomorrow. And the reason why we're doing 2 models is because there are 14, 15 of us here, and that's a lot to fit around one model, and we want everybody to get close. So it's going to be fun. I hope it's going to be fun for you guys. Instead of me doing 2 demos, I'm really just going to hit it hard and do 1 oil demo tomorrow. So I might have a more finished piece tomorrow to show you, and you can see the progress on more progress on that portrait. And we'll talk a little bit more about likeness. Again, a lot of it might be similar to what you hear today. But like I said, tomorrow we're going to have a much more finished product in the demo. At least that's the plan. You know, this is kind of one of those cool times where I'm like, oh, I could just like stop now, and because there's some fun things that I really kind of, when I'm this close and I like certain things about it, that it's kind of loose and unfinished. It takes some discipline to tell yourself, okay, I'm stopping. I'm just going to stop. Because the temptation is to keep going, and then it's like, oh no, I've overworked it. So right now it's very, can you guys see a little Degas influence in my work? I promise you, I'm not imitating him on purpose. It's just, I get him. I get his approach, and it totally works with me. And when that's one of the things that you might end up exploring is find an artist that you just get that, or there's something with the way that they work that appeals to you, and that can inform your process, can inform your approach. And there's several that are on my list that have informed my work and my whole approach. And so it's a combination of several different artists. And hopefully, you know, the goal is not to really imitate, but to really sort of do your own, to make it your own. That's the goal of all artists out there, is to really just make it your own and make it work for you. And to really find that zone is the perennial pursuit of every artist. So I'm telling you, I don't necessarily expect you or want you to paint like me, but I want you to find those artists to whom you gravitate that can really help you, and that's why I'm a big lover of art history, and that actually was my major. My major was art history with a fine art studio background, and so I had a lot of exposure to lots of different artists, and there were so many that I loved that taught me a lot. I learned a lot by just looking at their work, looking at their brushstrokes, looking at the way they solve visual problems, and the way they handled their paint. That just really sort of excited me and excited my imagination, and I'm like, oh, I get that. Well, hopefully, especially for you guys that are art majors, that's it's a lifelong process, really. You're going to keep finding artists that you just love. Hopefully, if you put yourself out there to look, there are going to be those artists that just speak to you, and hopefully those are the ones that are going to teach you how to solve certain visual problems. Like I could look at like Wayne Thiebaud. I love his solution for colors. I love his use of edges. I'm an edge girl because I get it. It works the way it works for me. I like that. Degas, just his approach to the figure in his facile simplicity. He could just capture with a few strokes. He could capture the figure in such an uncanny way, and it's like less is better. And it's just magic. So I want you guys, hopefully you'll find artists that are, that appeal to you and their work is just magic to you. And those are the ones that are going to teach you the most. John Singer Sargent, another one. His brushwork is just magic. I don't know how he does it, but I've spent a little bit of time trying to decode, well, okay, how did he even lay down his strokes? What was his process? And I know Steve Houston has spent some time going through and doing some, he'll go through and take a Sargent masterwork and he'll like replicate it in one of his, tutorials. And he picks out some things that Degas might do, and it's quite informative, and it's such a neat process to just really delve into the way an artist lays down his strokes. And try as it I might, the way that I lay down strokes is not going to be the way Sargent puts down his strokes. It's going to be a different animal altogether when I'm done, and that's okay. I'm okay with that, because I'm not trying to copy him. I'm trying to learn from him. But hopefully, ultimately, I'm kind of at a place where I've kind of discovered my own thing, and that's what every artist wants, is to discover their own voice. To make something like the human figure fresh, keep it fresh and new and relevant. That's a tall order. That's a really tall order to do human figure in a way that is that hasn't been done. I'm not going to say that hasn't been done, but in some ways that is just with fresh eyes, a fresh approach. That's a tall order. But that's my lifelong pursuit. So, for those of you who are watching again, there's only like 5 more minutes left of class. It's a shame you aren't here with us at the conclusion of this 3-day workshop, which is today, which is Monday the 4th, and then we do the 5th, we do the 6th. Unfortunately, we are only airing today and tomorrow, but wish you could join us. We're going to be at the Virginia Museum of Fine Art on Thursday for some of the students who are opting to do this optional portion of the workshop. We're just going to go there and have a fun, amazing day drawing from the masters. So, like I said, there's only about 5 minutes left of this live stream. So join us again tomorrow. Whoa. In my haste, as I said that, I laid down some color that wasn't properly mixed. So basically, even though we're ending in just 5 minutes, the rest of the class, we break for dinner and then we come back we have open studio time. So for us, it's like 3 days of awesomeness. I'll hope to do these workshops again from time to time as opportunities arise. And if SVU doesn't hate me, maybe they'll invite me back. So we did this last year, but we did not live stream it last year. It was we had a great time last year, and I hope we're just rocking it this year because I think everybody here just loves to have that block time to just focus on just getting to draw from draw or paint from a live model. That's such a treat. Okay, so and we are pretty much done. So I guess tune in tomorrow. We're going to do the same thing from 2 to 5. And again, it's a crazy URL, but if you go to my Facebook page, if you go to From the Art Studio of Rose Datoc Dall, let me spell that for you. Rose, R-O-S-E, and then Datoc, D like David, A-T like Thomas, O-C, which is my maiden name, and then Dall, D like David, A-L-L. So if you go to my studio page on Facebook, the links will be there. You can come in and check in tomorrow. You can also go to Instagram. You can go to Rose Datoc Dall. So it's Instagram.com/Rose Datoc Dall. And the links will be there. So join us again tomorrow. So we're signing out. And we'll check in again tomorrow. Bye.